Hello and welcome to Symbols and Cynicism, a podcast where we talk about all of the things that I love, some of the things that I hate, and this wacky adventure that we call life. My name is Bob, I'm your host, and I'm glad you're here today for a discussion with John Philip Sousa impersonator and enthusiast Rod Miller, and enough AI nonsense. Let's get it started. Welcome back to the program today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending 45 minutes or so of your week with us. 45, I know some are long. We just had our longest episode a couple of weeks ago. Anyway, it means a great deal that you spend part of your time with us so regularly. And if you've listened to every episode, thank you even more. If you're a new listener, welcome to the program. We do a lot of great things here, or at least we think we do, and we are approaching episode 50 coming up. In fact, we're approaching 50. We're approaching our 1-year Sidiversary, and we'll be talking more about that in upcoming episodes. I just wanted to say thank you for listening. We do have some fan mail we need to get to. This has been piling up a little bit recently. Pulling back the curtain just for a moment, I've been very busy the last several weeks. Work stuff, band camp, vacation, and so the last 3 episodes were all recorded about 4 weeks ago, so there was no chance to get any mail in because the mail that's come in the last 4 weeks, those episodes have already been recorded. So you notice we haven't really been doing that. There's a reason for that. So here we go. Number 1, listener sends, loving Verily a New Hope. Thank you so much for the recommendation. I'm glad you're listening to our book reviews and if you're reading something that we recommended, Dawn or I, if you listened to those homeworks multiple episodes ago, if you're reading something, let us know whether you liked it or didn't. That's okay too. Verily a New Hope is a Shakespeare adaptation or a Shakespeare version of Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, thus Verily a New Hope. It's written in act play type form, including stage directions, but it's the story of A New Hope, but it's written in Shakespearean form, iambic pentameter, and it's got very much a Shakespearean language to it. I read part of it and then I lent it to a friend, so I haven't gotten all the way through it, but the part I did read, every time R2-D2 boops and beeps in iambic pentameter, I giggle a little bit. So I'm glad you're reading it and glad you're enjoying it. Try some other things on the list. Try Dawn's list too. It's probably the more academically appropriate list. Number 2, listener sends, I want in on the Drum Corps Fantasy Draft next year. If you do it again, this sounds like a blast. Look, sure thing. If we still have a podcast next year and if we're still doing Fantasy Drum Corps, then my plan is to open it up to a wider group of folks. We wanted to try it once with just sort of our core group of people that are friends for a long time, and then we kind of work out the kinks with the draft and the rules, and then maybe next year we'll see. The plan is to open it up to others if we're still doing it. Speaking of Fantasy Drum Corps, the real Drum Corps season starts soon. In fact, it's actually technically started as you're listening to this, but as of the recording, it's a couple of days away. We're going to have our first scoring events of the season soon, so we'll start to see how our fantasy corps are playing out. Again, not everybody performs that first few days, so we'll give it another week. Maybe by the end of next week, we'll have seen everybody perform and have a score, sort of a baseline, to see how our fantasy drum corps are doing. And our last piece of mail here. Loved the DCI prediction, but you guys are totally wrong. I think Phantom wins it all. Well, look, you can think anything you want, and nobody knows what's really going to happen, obviously, or else they wouldn't be just fun predictions, right? And our predictions were pretty outlandish at times, but that was sort of the fun of it. Make goofy predictions and then laugh at yourself at the end. However, I will lay good money that Phantom does not win this year. I think their show is great. I saw the preview online. I like it. I like it a lot. I think it's going to be very good, but I've seen some other clips of other different upper tier drum corps as well from either preview shows or late camp rehearsals. I do not think Phantom wins. Before we get started, tell your friends, share us on Facebook. More listeners is more fun. If you want to financially support us, you can do that via the Support the Show link. You could find us on YouTube at Robert H. Sloan RHS Music. We're also on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. On with the show. Today we have part 1 of a recent conversation I had with Rod Miller. Rod is a John Philip Sousa enthusiast and impersonator, and we sat down and had a discussion about John Philip Sousa, his marches, why he's an impersonator. Just a fascinating discussion with a really unique individual. It was great. We're going to have it's a two-parter. So part 1 this week, part 2 coming up next time. And enough with the AI nonsense. Let's roll. All right, welcome our next guest into the show. I'm excited to have him here. He's a retired band director. Started his career at a small school in my area, St. Henry. He was in Beechwood and Perrysburg. Along the way, retired from Port Clinton. That's up by Lake Erie. In retirement, he also served as director of bands at Heidelberg University in Tiffin, Ohio. He currently teaches music at Kelly's Island School. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit because he has a really interesting commute on his work days. Along the way, he also became perhaps one of the world's foremost experts on John Philip Sousa and the marches of John Philip Sousa. He is a Sousa impersonator. He's also a, quote, real beard Santa in the month of December. He's married to a music teacher, has adult twin children, and we've been friends for almost 30 years from the time I worked his band camp way back in a previous century. It was the 1900s back then. Rod Miller, welcome to the show. Rod, how you doing today?
I'm great, Bob. It's good to be here with you. What an introduction. I hope I can, bring myself up to that level.
Oh, you're the man. Tell us a little, what did I miss? I know I missed some stuff. Tell us a little bit about yourself, anything I missed.
Yeah, I just, in retirement, I've definitely kept myself busy. I'm an educational consultant for Ready Music now. That's something I started to take over for actually a retired colleague, that had a stroke, and they needed somebody else to do road rep stuff and be an educational consultant. So I took over. Now I'm going to work for him again next year. I'm also the associate director of the Band Directors Marching Band. So if you saw them at the Rose Parade last year, Macy's 3 years ago, and the associate director of the New England Honor Band, which we marched the Rose Parade 2 years ago. So I'm keeping myself busy. Besides that, I am a Freemason, and I am an officer for the Grand Lodge of Ohio, and that keeps me hopping as well. So I try not to let any grass grow under my feet.
Yeah, there's no moss on you. We're here today mostly to talk about John Philip Sousa and things you know and your involvement in keeping that legacy alive. Take us back to the beginning. How did this all start with you and your love of Sousa? Like, what was the beginning sparks of all of that?
Yeah, sure. So I did my undergraduate at Ohio State University, and Keith Bryan, who at the time, and unfortunately Keith is dealing with some health issues and stuff, but Keith Bryan was a great Sousa impersonator as civilian Sousa, outstanding expert, and wrote a lot of books and what have you. But I did a Sousa concert at Ohio State with Keith Bryan on the podium. And I know what it did for me as a musician, and I saw what it did to the audience. And I was just like, there's something special about this. Well, at the same time, Paul Byerly, the foremost biographer of Sousa, Paul Byerly was from Columbus, lived in Westerville, and spent a lot of time on campus. So Paul would come in, and because I was so interested in all of this, and I really did thought, like, there's something different. I had to figure out what it was. And so I would pick Paul Byerly's brain as much as I possibly could. And so when it got time for me to graduate from Ohio State, my dear best friend, who's unfortunately passed away now, the great Dr. Vince Polsey, that was longtime director at Defiance High School, had amazing bands at Defiance. But Vince looks at me and he goes, you know what, Rod, we can do this at the high school level. Now, he had a double A band and I had a Class C band. So we were adapting. Now, the differences were is that Keith Bryan tended to play all the music that Sousa played. What Vince and I did was, say, follow the same kind of format and programming, because Sousa played the music of the day. And what I found was that when we played at OMEA, the more I got to digging into it, I'm like, well, obviously it is a music-educated crowd, right?
Right.
And so when you're playing some of these other things, they still had that appreciation for it. But what we were doing was looking at an audience of people coming in from the community that just, hey, it's band music, it's a concert, my niece is in the band, my grandkids are in the band, whatever it may be. So we started putting these Sousa concerts together in the style of programming that Sousa did. And Vince and I both learned from the great Leonard B. Smith, because he had the Detroit Concert Band.
Yeah.
And Vince did his doctoral dissertation on Leonard Smith. And so we did a lot of that. And Leonard Smith's programming with the Detroit Concert Band was Sousa programming. So we kind of got into this. And you and I were talking before we started this whole thing. You know, I started really doing the Sousa concerts, to be real honest with you, because I wanted the seniors to have a large crowd for their last concert of the year. I thought they deserved that.
Sure.
And I used the Sousa concert and me portraying Sousa as a bit of a hook and a vehicle to bring people in so that people could see the kids. And that worked very, very well. And for my 38 years that I've been doing it, so I taught 34 years in public school. I taught 2 more then at Heidelberg and retired. So for 36 years of Sousa concerts and doing that, I did it to bring people in. But after a while, it's like you start to realize, you know, I know a little bit more about Sousa than the average bear, you know?
Yeah.
And people then start talking, and then people are calling you and asking questions, and you're digging in. And then before you know it, somebody throws a title out you as a, you know, a Sousa expert or whatever. And I'm honored and flattered by that. But hey, I'm just a Sousa enthusiast. I just love it. But with that, then I felt like that I had a responsibility to maintain and to continue to promote the legacy of John Philip Sousa, the great bandmaster, because I hate to say it. And for the college directors that are out there listening, my apologies to you, but most of them don't play marches anymore. It's sad. The art of the march, unfortunately, is starting to take a back seat. And there's so much that we can do in there. And I understand there are people that don't like Sousa marches. I get that. That's okay. There's people that don't like Karel Husa either. There's also people that don't like Brian Bauman's or whoever it is. That everybody has their own flavor, right?
Yeah.
But I think, you know, America's preeminent bandmaster deserves a place in music education. And I think it deserves a place not only in music education, but it deserves a place in the musical heritage and also just the American history that we have in place. And so now that I don't have my own bands and I'm not bringing it in for the seniors, now when I do these Sousa concerts all over the United States, it's truly to promote what Sousa did and what he meant to the United States. And his style of programming, you know, most people hear Sousa concert, they think you're going to come in, you're going to play 8, 9 Sousa marches and go home. Right. And that's not it at all.
No, not at all.
I mean, not at all. The marches were only the encores. So some in the programs, you might have 9 pieces listed. And the only time that he actually listed a march was if it was a premiere. Mm-hmm. Other than that, though, he might get done playing, let's say, Light Cavalry Overture by Von Suppe, and get done. And as he would turn around, he'd yell to the band, "Washington Post march." And he would turn back around in about 7 seconds. Here come the downbeat, and they started playing Washington Post. So basically, every other song, oftentimes, were the encore marches.
Oh.
And so the programming is important. Now, when I say that I'm trying to play a little bit more, you know, some of the big conversations that I've had with John Bourgeois and Michael Colburn, Jason Fettig, and Ryan Allen is what would Sousa play today? Would he play? I mentioned Husa. Would he play Prague, music from Prague? Would he do that? Would he play Maslanka? Stuff like, would he do that? And so I think that we can play certain things and still maintain the integrity of the programming of John Philip Sousa, if that makes any sense to you. I mean, it's all in the programming.
So do you think he would play Maslanka and Husa and other more contemporary?
You know what? So the one thing that I always go back to is that Sousa always said every great piece of music must have a great melody. And that great melody must be inspired from a higher power.
Huh.
Okay? He wanted melodies.
Yeah.
So I wonder about Prague. I wonder about, different things. But Sousa didn't play 15, 16-minute long pieces of music. And I think part of that is he didn't want the audience to become bored. And here's why I say that. Because Sousa really cut his teeth in the opera. Sousa was a violinist, loved the opera, loved writing operettas and doing stuff, loved conducting pit orchestras for operas. I mean, that's what he was doing in Chicago when he got the assignment for The President's Own. He didn't apply for that. They just assigned him and said, here you go, it's yours. I know, crazy, right? Report for duty or be hung for being AWOL. I don't know.
Well, it was a different time in the Marine Band. I mean, they were not what the Marine Band is today. I mean, Sousa made them good. I mean, they were not good, right, when he got the appointment.
No, right. And Sousa's really what gave the band the reputation it has today. And Sousa was the 17th director of the band.
Right.
So it took 17 directors for them to finally, what I say, get it right. I mean, he just brought a different standard of music. But this whole opera thing, going back to that, Sousa always said, if you have two opera houses next to each other, and one of them is Opera Seria, which is serious opera, and Opera Buffo, comedic opera. Mm-hmm. He says the Opera Seria house is going to go out of business in 2 weeks because people are bored by it. People want to be entertained. It's just that simple. So when I'm programming the concerts, I'm like, okay, is this something that the audience is going to listen to? Does it have a nice melody? But I think there's also an educational component. Is this good for the audience to hear?
Well, and like you said earlier, you got to know your audience too. I mean, an audience of music educators is going to be a different "We Know That" piece than a summer Friday night concert series. Bring your lawn chair kind of concert, right? It's two different audiences. Not one is better than the other, but they are educated differently, and so you should perform different music for those two different audiences.
Right. So if you take Sousa in 1905 and plays a concert for 14,000 people, which happened all the time, right? Mm-hmm. He's still playing music of the day, and that music of the day is what they wanted to hear.
Right.
But that music of the day in 1905, some of it, I hate to say it, while it is still great music, is not as relevant to listeners in 2026.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. I mean, at that point, like ragtime is not as relevant now.
Correct.
Right.
And Sousa, here's the thing. I get people telling me all the time, well, Sousa didn't play jazz or ragtime. Yeah, he did. He didn't like it.
Right.
He really didn't like it.
Right.
And people say, well, he didn't play ragtime. And I said, well, he warmed up to ragtime more than he warmed up to jazz. If you don't believe me, listen to Easter Monday on the White House lawn.
Yeah.
There's that little comedic, almost ragtime-ish feel in Easter Monday on the White House lawn. And that's why that's one of my favorite non-march Sousa pieces is Easter Monday on the White, because I think it shows his personality. That's why I hate the movie that was made back in the 50s or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever. They portrayed him oftentimes, that movie, as being a pretty terse individual. And he was demanding, but he treated his people well. He had a great sense of humor. And that piece of music, I think, displays that sense of humor.
Well, I think a lot of people like Sousa that are obviously successful. He was a successful composer. He was a successful conductor, businessman. When you're successful, a lot of times you just we as band directors know this, right? When your band is good, a lot of people that don't know you think you must be a jerk, right? Because surely there's only one way to be successful, which of course is totally inaccurate. We'll post a couple of pictures on social media promoting this episode, but when you touched on this a little bit, when you portray Sousa, you go all the way. You're the Marine Sousa. You've got the beard, the glasses. Tell us a little bit about the process and what you go through to visually be Sousa.
Well, first of all, the beard is real, and my wife hates it, but she knows how much I love doing the Sousa stuff. And you know my wife very well, so you know that if Kathy's not liking something, it's just. But she knows it makes me happy, and she goes to the concerts and stuff like that, so she loves it. But my hair. I mean, you mentioned about the real beard Santa. My hair's as white as a piece of paper, right?
Right.
And so I grow the beard out a little bit bigger than for Santa. I trim it back more as Sousa would have had it. And what's interesting, when Sousa got the gig in 1880 as director of the Marine Band, he didn't have a beard. So he grew the beard, though, and the reason he grew the beard, and for a while, it was just unruly. I mean, it looked like he fell into someone's hedges out in front of their house that had not been trimmed in a 5 years, and he did it because he was so baby-faced, and because he still knew a lot of the guys in the band, because he was a musician's apprentice starting at age 14. That's a whole nother interesting story for a different podcast. But his dad, Antonio, was in the band. His dad was a trombone player in the band. And so Sousa was familiar with some of the guys that were in the band. And he felt like that they were not going to respect him for being such baby-faced and so young. He was 26 years old when he got the gig with the President's Own.
Yeah.
So he grew the beard to look older, and he kept that beard for a long time. So my beard, what I do, obviously, and here's an interesting little fact for you. All the colorizations of Sousa's pictures are wrong. I have seen his passport, and under color of hair, it says black. And so when I portray Sousa, I have black hair. And I take about an hour to get the hair black, my beard black. There's a whole process my wife helps me with and everything else like that. So when you see Sousa with a brown beard, it's incorrect.
All right.
His beard was black. So with that being said, the process starts. I shape my beard so it's very Sousa-esque. The pince-nez glasses, I have the exact style of the pince-nez, which is French for pinched nose. And he wore those pince-nez glasses. The uniform is an exact replica of what Sousa wore from 1880 to 1892, those 12 years that he was director of the Marine Band. And those uniforms are actually made for me by one of my sponsors, and that's Stanbury Uniforms. Stanbury makes those uniforms for me. If you were to take all of the accessories and everything else of the Sousa, and I actually have the what they call the Shako shield and the plume that's on top, the exact replica hat and everything.
Yeah.
It's probably about a $4,000 uniform that I wear, and it's heavy. It's very, very heavy. The epaulettes are that of a second lieutenant, which is what Sousa wore. Now, what's interesting, Sousa really didn't have a rank in the band. It was leader of the band. He had a title.
Okay.
It's actually one of the reasons why he left the Marine Corps, because he wanted to have a rank, and they wouldn't give it to him. So he had the pay grade of a second lieutenant, and he had the epaulettes of a second lieutenant.
Okay.
So, I mean, I've spent countless hundreds of hours researching the uniform and everything else like that. So, process of the makeup and getting dressed, get everything on is about an hour and a half to prepare for a concert.
Wow. Did you need, because of the replica uniform, did you need like permission of the military or the Marines, or is it not that replica-ish? Or is there something different?
Not that. So I actually have a copy of the 1875 Marine Corps manual that this uniform was based off of.
Okay.
So I have a copy of the manual, and it tells me exactly where everything is, the dimensions and everything else like that. That uniform is no longer like, so this, I'm looking at the coat right now on a big portrait I have on my wall. The coat is red. Well, now, and back then, the members of the band wore black coats. Well, now you know that the members of the band wear red coats.
Right.
The assistant directors wear red coats.
Right.
But like right now, Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Allen wears a black coat. The directors now wear black coats, and they switched over. I forget the exact year when they switched and made that, but that uniform of Sousa's is from the 1875 Marine Corps manual. So that if I walk into if I go to Little Creek, where the Navy School of Music is, where all the Marine musicians train, except for those for the President's Own. But if I were to walk in there and they look at me, they have no idea what I'm doing. They think I'm there and asking for a Snickers bar and a little orange pumpkin that I'm holding.
So you're not in danger of ending up in Leavenworth for impersonating a Marine or anything like that?
No, thank goodness,
okay,
right? Well, they wouldn't want me in there anyway. But there are some things on there that are still regulation Marine Corps today.
Sure.
And obviously, I've been fortunate enough to conduct the President's Own. I've done research there at Sousa Hall, and I've done a lot of stuff, and I know a lot of people in the band over the years. I've been very fortunate, and it's kind of funny. I get a call about once every other year or so, and they'll say, just a reminder that we absolutely love you being in a Marine Corps uniform, and we love the fact that you are supporting the Corps, and blah blah blah. Just remember, we cannot give you an official endorsement. You've never asked for one. I said, no, I never will ask for one.
Right.
But it's kind of, here's a real quick story. So I'm at Midwest Band Clinic a couple years ago, and I'm in my Sousa uniform. I was there with the Sousa Foundation. When I get done with the Sousa Foundation, I usually go over for some pictures and stuff like that at the President's Own thing, and people come in, they want their pictures, and it's kind of fun. They want their picture with John Philip Sousa, right? So as I'm leaving one day, the Navy was right across the hallway, kind of catty-corner from the little aisleway.
Yeah.
And they said, Mr. Sousa, can we talk to you a second? I said, sure. And I walked over and says, we got to ask you a question. Why do you portray Sousa in this red coat and that as a Marine?
Yeah.
And I said, well, quite frankly, I said the red coat looks better than your black one.
Oh.
And they go, okay, that's fair. That's fair enough. And so I stood there and talked. We had a good laugh and everything else like that. And I said, no, we just did it. And that's basically why I started doing Sousa as a Marine, because of the red coat. It's very flashy. It looks great,
Yeah.
For an audience and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting. The next day, I'm walking, and I will not say who it was. I go into the Marine booth, and they said, "Can we talk to you a second?" I'm sure. They go, "So you do like your relationship with the President's Own, don't you?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah. What? Why?" And they're like, well, we saw you over talking with the Navy, and we don't want to see you wearing a Navy uniform. And I said, no, don't worry about it. We're good. I'm sticking, because 13 years ago, it just happened 13 years ago, that the Marine Corps actually came in and made me an honorary Marine for me portraying Sousa. It was my 25th anniversary of portraying Sousa as a Marine. So it's 13 years ago, they came in and made me an honorary Marine. So I have to support the Corps, obviously.
Oh, a lot of people don't know that Sousa later in life was director of the Navy Band, right?
He was director of the Great Lakes Naval Band, so not the D.C. Navy Band.
Okay.
So he did that during World War I, and for a short amount of time. Here's what's the other thing is, he was actually signed up to help conduct some Army bands during the Spanish-American War. But it only lasted, like 9 months? Well, he got like pneumonia or typhoid fever. And by the time he got healthy, the war was over. So he never conducted anything with the Army band.
Okay.
Never. But he actually did sign up for that. And he is actually one of the founders of the Coast Guard band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he loved his military background. And even as a civilian, he often wore his Navy uniform. Yeah. He was so proud of his Navy uniform that's actually the uniform that he was buried in.
Right. So when you conduct as Sousa, and I know you do this mostly like guest appearances now, being in retirement, I know you You were with the St. Mary's Community Band. You've been at OU with Athens and all over the country, you mentioned.
Yep.
You obviously look like Sousa. Do you conduct, like is your conducting style like patterned after Sousa's mannerisms physically?
At times. It's interesting you ask because I've actually, Paul Byerly's son, John, lives in Westerville, and we're very good friends, and he'll come to concerts. And the first concert he ever came to, he saw me do something. And we got done, and he says, I saw your nod of the cap to, Sousa was often called the governor. He says, I saw your nod of the cap to the governor. And that, my nod of the cap, and I do it on all the time, Sousa often conducted his marches in a 4 pattern.
Oh.
And so, and what's interesting, Sousa was, of course, he had a horseback riding accident and lost a lot of the use of his left arm. Sousa was very minimalistic in his conducting. And actually, I've read different things about him talking about these animated conductors, and he doesn't need to be that. But he also had a band that obviously played extremely well.
Sure.
Had the best musicians in the world. And so, but he was not animated at all. And the other thing, once again, it was kind of the thing, kind of like me talking about why I started doing this. It wasn't for me. It was for my seniors, for my band.
Right.
You know, Sousa was like, you didn't come to watch me conduct. You came to hear my band members play.
Right.
Of course, as I've gotten older and I've had 2 shoulder reconstructions and a spine that doesn't like me and stuff like that, you know, I think I've gotten even more minimalistic. But if you got great players, you know, what the heck, you know?
Yeah.
So
start them and get out of the way, right?
Well, right. Let's know how we're going to do this, and let's do it.
So you're the only impersonator that does it in the Marine uniform. Is that right?
That is my understanding. Okay. I have not seen any others do it in a Marine Corps uniform.
Are there some others that do it like civilian or Navy?
I have seen some that will do it as a civilian, okay, or they'll just wear a black, some sort of a black coat.
Right.
You know, and that's fine. It's fine. I mean, and they do it, and they'll do it with the goatee that he had or just the mustache.
Yeah.
You know, Keith Bryan just did it with the mustache.
Right.
And did it with the white hair. And, you know, I used to do it with the white hair. And then as I started really learning more, and I'm like, okay, if I'm really going to do this, you know, when Sousa was in the Marine Corps, he had black hair. So I need to start dyeing it black. So I used to dye it white because my hair was, as you know, in my younger days was
black.
Very dark brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was black.
Yeah.
And now it's all white. So I kind of gone the opposite.
You got your head on backwards. You should have gone the other way.
I got my head on backwards. Yeah. Oh, one time I tried to spray the back of my hair on my own, and my wife came in and she's like, you know, I feel like I need to take you out in the front yard and hose you off and start over again. This is just really bad. She goes, I'll never try to do the back of your hair again.
That's why we need great wives like you and I have to keep track of us a little bit. What are some of the things when you go to guest conduct as Sousa? What are some of the things you discuss with the band? Like, what was different? This wasn't on my list, but I'm sure you're going to knock it out of the park anyway. What are some things musically that you discuss with the band? Like, hey, if we're going to play like Sousa's band would have played, are there some things you do that would be not necessarily modern playing or performance practices?
Right. In a nutshell, longer equals louder, shorter equals softer. So in other words, like let's start some stripes. Da, 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 da. You know, longer notes have emphasis on them.
Yeah.
The lighter, the shorter the note is, the lighter it's to be played. That's number one. Now we're obviously talking ballpark, and there's a lot of variations, right?
Right.
We're talking ballpark. Number two, never forget that Sousa was a violinist, and he loved a good melodic line. If there's a beautiful melodic line, and you can hear it in the second strain of Stars and Stripes. It's very smooth, very melodic.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, Sousa often thought as a violinist. I think one of the best things I ever did was learn a lot of string stuff, pass all my string methods, and spend a lot of time with orchestral people to make my band better.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Alain Trudel, the conductor of the Toledo Symphony, does so well with the Toledo Symphony, because Alain is a trombone player, and I see him applying band concepts to the orchestra all the time. And then he takes the orchestra concepts, and Alain is one of the best trombone players in the world, just flat out. I mean, he's world-class trombone player. But I see him do those things there. The other thing, with Sousa marches, most bands overplay them. And lastly, this sounds really weird. Sousa said, wherever the march starts tempo-wise, that's where it ends. You do not slow down anywhere. He was very emphatic about not slowing down before the grandioso in Stars and Stripes. Grandioso means it is not a tempo change. It means that you are to play it grandly.
Right.
And, of course, the best band in the world always does a retard.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've looked at past conductors and the current, and I'm like, so why? And they're like, I don't know. But, I've tried to figure it out. So I've gone back and I'm in the process now. Like, okay, here's a recording of the Marine Band in 1958 playing Stars and Stripes. Nope, they didn't slow down before the grandioso. Great. So here's the next year. So what director was responsible for starting to slow down Stars and Stripes right before the grandioso, then go back to a tempo?
Yeah. Because
Sousa was emphatic. It should not slow down. As he would say, the tempo is the tempo is the tempo. Where you start is where you finish. You do not vary anywhere in between.
So have you figured it out? Who slowed down first?
No, I'm still working on it.
Still working on it.
I'm still working on it. In all my free time I have, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, that's on my agenda to do here, But I think I'm up to 63 or 64.
Okay.
Trying to find recordings and stuff. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's all of these things you're talking about. You mentioned earlier, people don't play Sousa marches anymore. For me, a lot of times as a director, it was sort of out of fear and reverence that I didn't play Sousa marches. Because number one, if you play them the right way, not the right way, if you play the legitimate hard versions, the Loris Schissel and Keith Bryan versions, they're freaking hard.
They're hard. They're hard.
We don't have bands that can do that. Partially, I always looked at them and I'm like, if it wasn't for first trombone and first clarinet, we might have a shot at this. But those parts are so high. It was written in a time when we played differently on our instruments, and different expectations.
And being an LMEA adjudicator, I'm okay with him not playing a Sousa march.
Right.
I really am.
Yeah,
I'm fine. But play it. Play Carl King, but learn good march style and understand that there's a plethora of different march styles. Do your research.
Right.
Is it an American two-step? Is it a passo doble? If it's an Italian march, when was it written? Because Italian marches before X date are played this way. Italian marches after this date are played this way.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I went and played an Italian march. And I spoke with Loris Schissel, and I spoke with some others, and people that really know, and so I could nail the style. And I had an adjudicator just rip me up one side and down the other because I didn't play the march the way that they thought. I will be gender neutral here. That they thought that it should be played, and when they started to tell me the way it should be played, they described an American two-step march to a T.
Right.
And I'm like, no. It's an Italian march.
Well, yes, marches. It's a lot like Holst, right? Like everybody's got their opinion, and most of them are wrong, and somebody out there is right. But it's scary. It's scary to do. Later in my career, I discovered Andrew Ballard wrote a lot of really easier versions that I thought still sounded great and incorporated style. How would Sousa feel about the grade 2-3 versions of his marches? Like Andrew Ballard wrote a lot of them. Would he be cool with that, do you think?
Ballard did. Mike Story did. David Schaefer did. Years ago, here's a name. We're going way back. Harold Gore. Harold Gore wrote a lot of different Sousa marches. He put them in different keys. He did all sorts of stuff. For me, it is still teaching Sousa.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with it. What would Sousa think? Well, I have two trains of thought. Number one, I think he'd be fine with it because, hey, you're promoting my music, you're playing my music. And I think the other part is like, no, that's not the way it was intended to be done. But, let's keep in mind, Sousa died in 1932. What would Sousa think in 2026?
Right.
Almost 100 years difference.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my thought was always I would rather play the easy version good than the real version bad.
Correct.
Or no version, right? Like none.
When I was at St. Henry and had a Class C band, right, and we're doing Sousa concerts.
Yeah.
I played this balance. I played David Schaefer. And there's some nice stuff that's out there. And that's what I've had people say, well, I'd love to do a Sousa concert, but I got a 50-piece Class C band. I'm like, great. I'll show you what to play. Really? Yeah. You can still do a Sousa style concert and have the same type of effect because let's face it, those bands I had at St. Henry, they were great bands. And I really cut my teeth on Sousa with really awesome Class C bands playing music that was grade 2.5 to 3.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
So why not? I mean, play it.
Yeah.
Play it and teach them about the great bandmasters of, it's called music education, right?
Well,
it's not just note education, right?
Well, when I think, you play the easier version of the march, it allows you to spend more time talking about the music and about the composer, etc., rather than chasing notes and fixing tone the whole time. You never get to the other stuff too. And sometimes that stuff the kids remember is the other, not just the notes and the rhythms or the piece. They remember the story about this or that, or, why he wrote it, etc., all that sort of stuff. So.
Oh yeah.
I think most people know Sousa for his marches. What sets a Sousa march apart from other great, like a Carl King or a, Henry Fillmore?
Kenneth Alford, some of the European guys.
What sets them apart? Like, what makes a Sousa march a Sousa march?
It's like when you see a great music educator and they go, man, they really got it. And that whole thing of define it. That's always the $1 million question. What is it?
Right.
Man, they really have it. Well, what is it? And I don't know. It's weird. I think when you dig into Sousa, you see that he had some little musical jokes. Okay, at the 3/4 mark of a strain of a Sousa march, there's something different. Yeah. There's a nugget of differentness there, and that has to be. And that's him going, okay, and now, there, I got you. Okay, the bass drum's been accenting on 1 at the end of measure 4, or at the beginning of measure 8, it's on 1, and then here comes 12, and now we're on 2. He always did something a little bit different. His melodies were very good, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that Sousa wanted, he always felt that his melodies came from a higher being. And I think that his melodies are very unique. I think they're oftentimes very hummable. And I think that Sousa always said the one march that he wished that he would have written and didn't was Bagley's National Emblem. That's the one march that Sousa said, I wish I would have written it. So what is it? I think I don't know. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole thing. It's just pure genius. Now, I'll be honest. There are some marches of Sousa's that I'm like, okay, whatever. I think he wrote it overnight while he was smoking a cigar in his living room.
Right.
They're like, it's kind of like the whole T-shirt we see on July 3rd, and Thomas Jefferson said, "Oh wait, that's due tomorrow."
Yeah,
and
right. I mean, you're going to write. How many marches did he write? I mean, hundreds, right? 700 or something.
Right. Yeah, 126. Now
you're not going to knock them all out.
Officially 127.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to knock them all out of the park. I mean, you're going to have some stinkers in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, there's a few marches I will not play. Yeah. I don't like them. Yeah, don't like them. But I also have I have my favorites too. But, yeah.
No, breathe. Find your happy place.
Enough with the AI nonsense. This might seem like old man yells at cloud, but I don't think so. AI tools can be useful. I agree. I use AI. But does everything have to be AI? Every time an app updates on my computer, it now includes AI. And while I appreciate the ability to auto-caption my TikTok and YouTube videos, I don't think I need Dorco to tell me to put a dynamic at the beginning of a crescendo because it's currently an ambiguous dynamic. Hey, Dorco, how about if AI changes the B double flat to an A for me automatically? That would be useful. Why does every Google search have to show me the AI results, which are not always accurate, by the way? Why does every concert, every job posting, every announcement poster on social media have to look the same because of AI-generated slop? When I was a kid, the Jetsons told me that Rosie the robot would do the chores so that I could be creative and have fun. But as it turns out, the Jetsons were wrong. It's Rosie doing the art, so I have time to sweep the floors and do the laundry. We've got it all backwards. Look, AI has its place. I use it. I do. I use it as a tool. It's one tool in my toolbox. This is not anti-AI, but this is anti-everything AI. AI is anti-art. Let's use the human touch. Let's return humans in the arts. Bob Ross would not be using AI to paint happy little trees. Let's use Canva to make our announcement posters, or Photoshop. Although, by the way, I did log into Canva the other day, and you know what they now have? You guessed it, Canva AI. Frick's sake, it's everywhere. Can we just back it down a notch? Did the Terminator teach us nothing? I feel better. You feel better? I feel better. It should be noted that no portion of this podcast was created by AI. Homework for the week. A thought from Dr. Brad Johnson. Dr. Johnson is an educational consultant, speaker, and author. He's a former educator. I became familiar with him during COVID, way back in the day, when I fell in love with his concept at the time of relationships before rigor, grace before grades, patience before programs, and love before lessons. Despite the fact that I do have a particular affinity for alliteration, those ideas, this relationships before rigor, encapsulated what I'd already believed as an educator. And at that time, COVID time, it got me through some hard times. I had it posted on my wall: relationships before rigor, grace before grades, patience before programs, love before lessons. But today's thought comes from Dr. Johnson in a recent social media post. It was the following, quote, "Culture is not built by the statement on the wall, but by the actions of the people within the walls," end quote. Brilliant. Again, that encapsulates tons of thoughts in one short statement. Over the past 12 months, I've been in a lot of schools, a lot of different kinds of schools, a lot of different cities, and they almost all have one thing in common: a statement on the wall near the office or in the gymnasium. Bulldog pride in all we do, or every kid every day, or the Wildcat way. Of course, I'm making all of those up, but you get the idea. And while these sayings are catchy and they do make me smile and make me chuckle, and again, Wildcat way, that's alliteration. I love alliteration. Symbol Sid, right? There were sometimes a stark contrast between the saying on the wall and how that made me feel, and the way the people inside made me feel. Sometimes there was no statement and I felt great. Sometimes bulldog pride in all we do, and I didn't feel a lot of bulldog pride. Again, making these all up. You get the point. This coming school year, how are you, teachers, educators, parents, kids, or other, going to be the kind of person who lives the slogan on the wall, not just read the slogan on the wall? Or better yet, skip the slogan and just be great at what you do. Okay, that's the show. Make sure you leave a rating, drop a comment, or send a message on the app of your choice. You can text the show with the link at the bottom of the description. You can check out our merch store at themarchingarts.com/RHS or our YouTube channel at Robert H. Sloan, RHS Music. We are off for a week or so, but when we return, we will have part 2 of today's discussion with Rod Miller and Exit Stage Left. Thanks for joining me today. The theme music is Superfly, written by me, copyright RHS Music. The show logo is designed by John Suh, and our producer, as always, is my sister, Kathy. I hope you'll join us next time for more reflection and ranting on symbols and cynicism.